1981 saw the introduction of the BBC Micro, a machine by Acorn Computers which made its way into almost every academic institution in the UK, in no small part due to it being very heavily subsidised by the government and the British Broadcasting Corporation, as the micro of choice to help spearhead the UK's computer literacy project, itself a planned 10-year-long educational programme to help bring the UK into the computer age. We covered this extensively in our BBC Micro series. There's a link on the screen if you want to pop off and watch that first. The BBC Micro was so versatile and expandable that in many ways it was the 1980s version of the Raspberry Pi, at least in the ability to hook it up to things and tinker, but definitely not in terms of cost. The Beeb wasn't an inexpensive machine to own at home, outside of the government subsidy. Acorn followed the BBC Micro with the Electron, as an attempt to make a mark on that home computer market, but it wasn't the smash hit Acorn hoped it would be. Acorn's next machines would unknowingly revolutionise the computer industry, and their inaugural entries into putting RISC computers onto desks provided an amazing range of machines. We'll cover some of these machines in future episodes, but for today we'll be focusing on a very significant model in the Acorn product lineup. So, as 1981 saw the launch of the first BBC branded Micro, 1989 saw the release of the last desktop microcomputer to bear that famous logo, and what a machine it was. Come and join me as we discover the Acorn A3000. Here at The Shack, we'd like to give a big thanks to the sponsor of this video, my good friends at PCBWay. They'll be helping us out with our PCB fabrication needs and offer a very professional and high quality service for extremely reasonable prices. They can even populate your PCBs for you if you're tired of waving a hot iron around. There's a link to their website in the description where you can check out all of the amazing services they offer. Now back to the show. Acorn had introduced their reduced instruction set computer or RISC based architecture to the world in June 1987 with the Archimedes 300, 400 and 500 series, which all had the same basic 4-chip architecture but differed in respect of their processor, expansion slots and memory, with the 540 at the top of the range carrying the ARM3 processor, 4 expansion slots and a whopping 16 megabytes of memory. Even the entry-level 305's ARM2 processor effectively ran almost 7 times as fast as a stock Amiga 500's Motorola 68000. Taking the machine as a whole, it was over twice as fast as both the 68000 based Amigas and STs. We held an interview with Paul Fellows, ex of Acorn Soft, earlier in the year, where he talks about the genesis of the RISC architecture, and it's a fascinating insight into the technology that pervades our lives today.
As the Acorn successor didn't find traction, unfortunately, from that board meeting, I take it that did that lead focus then onto the RISC projects and how they would become the focus for Acorn?
Yeah. It's interesting, actually. I don't think many people realise, but the RISC machine had been around a long time. The idea of Acorn designing a RISC machine, it was in existence before I joined. And so in the days of the BBC B, before we'd even produced the B plus or the Electron, the germ of the idea was there, and it was absolutely top secret and known to hardly anyone. But on the quiet, people were sort of mentioning it in hushed tones as a thing that might happen one day. And so, yeah, we're talking late 1984 when we were talking about this sort of Model C stroke Electron plus stroke sort of machine, really aimed at competing with and undercutting what the Amiga and the Atari were doing at that time.
Definitely worth a watch. The operating system, initially called Arthur but in later revisions renamed to RISC OS, did support multitasking unlike the Atari ST, but employed a cooperative method rather than the more advanced preemptive multitasking in the Amiga. The OS did, however, provide a full-colour graphical user interface in resolutions and colour depths far outstripping both the ST and Amiga at the time. and sound was also impressive with 8 channels of 8-bit stereo output. The A420 upwards also benefited from a hard disk as standard. Having BBC Basic built in was also a good entry point to those moving on from the Acorn 8-bit machines, and the range enjoyed a plethora of add-on cards including scientific equipment, speech recognition, MIDI, SCSI and all manner of languages. But it was in 1989 that we saw the release of the A3000, the first Archimedes to be presented in a wedge-style case, like the BBC Micro before it, and in keeping with the style of the Amiga and ST. It was also the first in the Archimedes range to not carry the Archimedes name, instead bearing the BBC logo and the name British Broadcasting Corporation Microcomputer System, which is a bit of a mouthful. With government subsidy, a school could pick up an A3000 for £529, which wasn't much of a step up from a BBC Master 128K at the time, which was selling for £499. An A3000 at home would cost you £649 plus VAT, and that put it in the expensive bracket when compared to the Amiga 500 and the newly launched Atari STE, which were each selling for around £400 at the time. So was the A3000 worth the extra money? Let's take a deeper look. The return to the wedge form factor made for, in my opinion, a lovely looking machine, and the design motif definitely carried over from the BBC Micro with these distinctive red function keys. It doesn't feel as solid as the original Beeb, which I'm quite sure you could drive a tank over, but it's sturdy enough, and most schools would have got these fixed to desks and had nice little metal shelves added to hold the monitor. For this series, we're lucky enough to have this machine courtesy of long-time viewer Amy, who contacted the channel a little while ago and asked if we wanted this for our collection. Of course we did, and a quick road trip soon ensued. Following a nice chat and a cup of tea, this A3000 made its way home to the shack and will be subject to a full restoration and some sensitive usability upgrades. This machine is in quite a state at the moment cosmetically, so I'm hoping that inside it's not suffered too much damage. Anyway, before we take it apart, let's take a look at the external features. On the right hand side we have a floppy drive. No out of the box support for hard drives on this model, as it was intended as an entry level machine sitting under the new A4XX range. There's also a reset switch sitting here, and we can see the grill for one of the stereo speakers. The left hand side carries nothing but the grill for the other speaker. On the back we have a sweeping array of ports and connectors. External expansion, which allows a single pod dual to be fitted externally, and this is where we'd add our hard disk functionality. RGB monitor port, mono video, a headphone socket, parallel port, a serial port not fitted on this model according to the sticker, well the port clearly is but the functionality is missing, and an Econet socket, again not fitted on this model if the sticker is to be believed. On the underside there's the mouse port and a small compartment which can be used to smuggle rebels past Imperial blockades. Opening the case on these A3000s is a simple matter of loosening these two screws on the back and removing this screw from the centre of the case. Then pop the clips on the rear and lift the case gently upwards. There are a few tabs at the front of the case that you'll need a plastic spudger to pop open, and then the top lifts neatly off. If you're doing this, note that the keyboard isn't screwed down, so be careful it doesn't drop or move about, damaging the membrane connectors. Gently pull the keyboard membrane free from its connectors and set the keyboard aside. Doing so, we can instantly see something amiss. We have a dreaded battery leak. So that's not good and will require some investigation and no doubt repair when we come to the refurb. For now though, let's remove the floppy drive by removing these 4 screws from underneath the case and then unclipping the power and the data cable, setting the floppy aside. The speakers are connected to the mainboard via these two black and white cables. Let's get those out of the way too. A closer inspection of the damaged area reveals what looks like mostly surface corrosion, so I'm hopeful there's nothing too nasty lurking around. By a massive stroke of luck, it looks like the corrosion fell short of the actual ROM chips themselves, so that can only be a good sign. Serial and Ethernet just need their ICs populating, and I couldn't resist having a quick clean up of the mainboard and a check to see if those ROMs had in fact been touched by corrosion. And they hadn't. Looks like we may have caught this one just in time. Well, I hope you've enjoyed that introduction to the Acorn A3000, and I hope you'll join us for the next part in the series, where we'll do a full refurbishment of the machine and some sensitive modern usability upgrades. I'm really grateful to Amy for this donation, and I'm looking forward to seeing this machine back to its former glory. Who knows, maybe this machine will replace my BBC Model B as my daily script writing machine. As always, thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing to the channel and hit the bell for notifications of new content. If you'd like to support the channel, there are a few ways you can do this. You can become a patron of the channel, or you can simply buy us a coffee, and links to both of those are on the header on the main page, and both help us to continue to get cool new stuff to test and share with you. Or if you have something to donate to the channel, please get in touch via email. Please do leave your comments below, as we always love to read them, and until next time in the shack, it's goodbye from me.